The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we look at the deeper themes and hidden layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm Dom Bettinelli of the StarQuest Network, and I wanted to start this show briefly with a note that this is an episode we recorded a few months ago to thank our patrons at patreon.com/StarQuest for their generosity in making this and all the shows at StarQuest possible. We gave them early exclusive access, but now, a few months later, we're making it available to you to show you one of the benefits of becoming a patron of StarQuest. And so now we bring you this show, and we hope you enjoy it.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. And all this is made possible by you, our patrons on Patreon. I'm Thomas Salerno, and joining me today on the panel are Jeff Haecker. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Thomas.
Hey, and Patrick Mason. Hello, Pat.
Howdy, Thomas.
All right, so here at StarQuest, we are always looking for new and exciting ways to thank our patrons, whose generous support keeps the Secrets of Middle-earth and all of our StarQuest podcasts on the air. We recently reached out to our patron community with a fun creative exercise. If you had control of a big media empire like Amazon Prime or Warner Brothers and had the budget and resources to create any Middle-earth film or streaming series you could imagine, what would you pitch? So that's basically going to be our discussion, especially for you, our patrons. Before a few months later, we'll put this up for the general audience, but I'm excited. What about you guys?
Yeah, we've been kind of talking, like, I feel like for the last couple of years almost, of like, well, here's some like cool ideas, what would be cool shows, and especially as they start to expand with more movies and potential TV shows. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I've been getting hyped up more and more over the course of the day.
Nice.
So I've been reading the stuff and thinking about them and what they would look like and advertisements would look like. And
yeah. Yeah, so we had some great responses from you, our patrons. And what we're going to do is that I'm going to read through your guys' responses and we'll comment on them, and then we'll share some of our own ideas because yeah, like Pat said, I've kind of been at a loss because you patrons have had such great ideas that I'm like, oh, now I have to scramble to think of something as cool as you guys. But without further ado, yeah, let's get started. Although, and I'm going to be fair and read all of the patron comments, even the ones that aren't quite exactly a pitch, but are still fun comments. And first off, we've got Misty King, who says, I could see Jeff Bezos offering Middle-earth excursion packages. Well,
come now, see Middle-earth.
I mean, Amazon does everything pretty much now. They deliver your medications, they deliver your groceries. It seems almost every week I'm getting an ad for some new Amazon service. So who knows?
Buy your ticket now. You'll be picked up by drone, dropped at the airport, and flown by cargo ship to New Zealand.
Flown by cargo ship? Are we talking Arundel's flying ship? But I mean, the Hobbiton set still does exist. Like I think it's an actual destination you can go to. I want to say there might be a brewery there or something, or at least like they brew beer and have it available there from what I've read about it. So now I don't know who owns it. I'm assuming it's owned by New Zealand or some, agency or something within New Zealand. I don't think whatever company, it's slipping my mind of who produced Lord of the Rings movies, owns it, but you can go there. But yeah, leave it up to Jeff Bezos to, especially once Rings of Power is over in a couple decades of making these destinations available. You can go to Numenor. You can go to,
set tours would be awesome. Yeah.
I guess you can't really go to Aragon anymore, at least based on the last season. Or it might be a smoking ruin, but
yeah. And yeah, I heard that like it's a whole like the Middle Earth kind of tour, like you can book to New Zealand is like a whole experience too. You can go to some of the other locations where, you know, that you'd recognize from scenes from the movie.
I've seen videos. I'm not a runner. I'm not athletic really in any way, but I've seen videos of people who are like doing runs in those areas. And there's one I remember where a guy's doing a run and he's like, okay, I've got to kick it into gear because I'm on the plains before Helm's Deep or something. And then it like kicks off the Rohan music in gear as he's running like across, or like when he's doing like the run across, when you first like really see or when like Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn are running, he plays that music too. So.
Oh yeah, the iconic music. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'd be the kind to visit. I'm going to go visit the Green Dragon and sit in a pub and sit in a hobbit hole and eat food and smoke pipes and hang out with my friends. So
Yep.
Yeah, and like I heard that like that whole village of Hobbit, it was just like farmland before that. You know, I think it was a sheep farmer's property. Yep. And it was just transformed. And I think actually between the movie trilogies, I remember reading somewhere that they actually kind of didn't keep the village part, the Hobbit village kind of part of it up. And then once they realized, oh, wait, we could be making more money from this, they sort of restored it. They made sure after the Hobbit movies to not take away everything that they had built. But yeah, no, that would be fun. So our next comment comes from Tammy Longpray, who says, does the entire Silmarillion count? She continues, okay, barring that, I'd love to see the whole story of Beren and Luthien play out. They had so many adventures. My thought is they can make a movie from like one paragraph about Gollum, the tale of Beren and Luthien would be rich fodder indeed.
Yeah,
very true, Tammy.
It'd be like a Tolkien cinematic universe. You know, the first one ending with the "I am Feanor" kind of a thing. You know, start there with the Silmarils and just go from there. You could do the entire first stage as like a 26 film, TV show.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me of I'll basically kind of skip ahead here. In one of our last comments, Father Jeff Horton posted just this link to a Babylon Bee post where it was like, Peter Jackson to honor Christopher Tolkien with 578 film adaptation of the Silmarillion. So yeah, that's essentially the same thing. Yeah.
And they just have a drone. They just have a drone tour of Beleriand and its realms, and the entire chapter is just just a drone tour flying over, or a plane or something flying.
Get
over.
Get David Attenborough to like narrate that part. It's like a documentary.
And here we see Sirion falling down, breaking into the ground itself and coming out on the other side.
Yeah, no, I mean, Beren and Luthien, because that's like some of the oldest things of the Legendarium that he wrote, at least the initial like drafts of it, because it's about him and his wife in a lot of ways. It's kind of a telling or kind of an honoring of him and his wife's relationship. So I think that would be really interesting to see, because they go on because we haven't gotten there in our read through yet for this podcast, but if you're a patron, you probably have read it. But they go on an adventure to try to steal a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth, because that's like because Thingol, Melian's dad, or not Melian's dad, Luthien's dad tells Beren, like, you can marry my daughter, but you have to do this hugely impossible thing that no one could ever do. Like it's like the most Disney king thing ever of do this impossible thing that you can never do. But then she goes with him to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they bring their talking dogs. I mean, yeah, mean, that would be an interesting, like a Disney adaptation of this.
Tolkien would resent that, given how much he didn't like the Disney films.
Yeah.
Well, there was a song battle with Baron.
It was
or not with
Finrod and Sauron. Yeah.
There's a song battle. So.
Right, and a lot of Luthien stuff she does through song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, it could be.
And I mean, she is a Disney princess. She has like nightingales follow her around and like and sing. I'm like,
maybe that's why he didn't like the Disney movie, because he's like, you're just stealing my idea here.
I almost feel like Baron and Luthien done in like the style of Sleeping Beauty would actually be really cool, because have you ever taken like a close look at the backgrounds of Sleeping Beauty? Like they're beautiful, like, and they just give like this fairy tale, vibe where it's like, this is what fairy tales look like. It's like,
But those were specially commissioned. Like Disney said, I want the backgrounds to look like you're in an art gallery in like of medieval, like of medieval times. That's what I want the backgrounds to look like. And they're solid. Like you could put those up in a house and you wouldn't, unless you knew, you wouldn't recognize, oh yeah, that's Sleeping Beauty, because they did them so well.
Right. They look like a medieval like tapestry or something.
Because that was the first big Disney movie, right? Or I think it was
Snow White was the first.
Snow White was first.
One.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but yeah, Sleeping Beauty, the castle in Disneyland in California, that is based on Sleeping Beauty's castle.
Right, that's the Sleeping Beauty castle. Yeah.
Right. The Disney World castle is Cinderella. And if we ever want to bring the Secrets of Disney podcast back, I'll probably be on that.
I mean, and those like those two castles have just become like, this is what fairy tale castles look like,
Yeah, well, if you've ever looked at because I think I don't know if it's the Cinderella one or I think it's the Cinderella one is based on. I mean, they're based on German castles or like Austrian castles in that region, because there's some that are still like well kept and maintained to this day as a tourist thing, because they're just so like and that's what that's what Disney kind of are based on visually is those castles.
Yeah, it's like not the kind of castle where it's like, this is a good design for defense. It's more like, no, we're just going to show off how many spires and pinnacles we can put on this, and flying buttresses we can put in this castle.
Yeah. But it'd be cool to see like a Disney rendering of like Angband and what that might look like.
Ooh,
because that's like the biggest, like tallest castle.
Or like Tolkien-inspired, like Sauron's fortress.
Yeah. Really cool. I imagine it would have very Black Cauldron or Dark Cauldron.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, the Black Cauldron. Love that movie.
Yeah. That's what I would think it would look like if
it's nothing like the books, but it's still a great movie.
Which used to have just an amazing quote unquote ride at Disneyland Tokyo, but has since gone away since the giant tsunami.
Oh,
sadness. But yeah, but they picked a kid from the crowd and they got to do the whole Black Cauldron thing with the arrow and everything. It was a fantastic experience, but gone now.
and like Black Cauldron has like good Gollum in it. Gurgi. It's just great. And now we're talking about Disney stuff.
Like, yeah, we went way off track.
But I mean, like, Disney fantasy movies are some of the best fantasy movies ever made. Like, so I mean, it's good to use them as models if you're gonna do something, Silmarillion based that's animated.
Yeah. Before we move on from that one, I was just going to ask, and we haven't planned this. Who would y'all cast as Baron and Luthien? If you could cast anybody, I'll say living, but I mean, if you have one that from like older actors too, that are, no longer alive, but you think they'd be a good fit, who would y'all pick? I haven't thought of any myself. So,
Henry Cavill as Baron.
Ooh, I could see that.
I don't know why, but flat out. And I would say the gal who plays Starlight in The Boys, I don't remember what her name is. But she's gone prosthetics, if I have heard correctly. I have not watched season 4, but I understand there's been some appearance changes. But prior to that, I think she would make a good Luthien. Like, I'm trying to think of somebody very kind of slight. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I like Henry Cavill, and you could see him, like, because he's played like gruff, scruffy characters before. I mean, he's Geralt in The Witcher, or was Geralt in The Witcher, so he can play that like woodsman, like wandering guy pretty well. So yeah, no, I like that. I don't have I can't think. I'm trying to think of myself of who I.
Erin Moriarty, that's her name.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like, my default is always thinking of like Disney, or not Disney, like Marvel actors and actresses, for like, because that's just what I've seen so much more recently. So I was almost thinking like Haley Atwell as maybe Luthien, because she's kind of tall, but not like super tall. So I think she could be a good Luthien. She's played like high class, like noble characters before. Like, she's Peggy Carter. She's
I see. I think I would cast her as Turin's sister.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's got. I mean, she fits the whole like warrior woman profile like very well. And I don't know. It's just got that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe that's just because that's the roles I've seen her in. That's where my mind goes.
The popular fan casting for Baron that you see online is Adam Driver.
Interesting.
Adam Driver, really?
Yeah, that's what I see a lot of the times, is people say that. I'm not sure why. I mean, I can see it. I just
really?
I don't know why people say that, but it's interesting.
I mean, he is a really good actor, and he's one of the better things about the Star Wars sequels. So if you could do well in that, then
I almost like him as a tour, to be honest. Now just in my mind is just trying to put everybody in the Silmarillion.
or Turin. I could definitely see him as Turin.
How about Fëanor?
Oh, wow. Adam Driver. He's got the intensity.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, you just face swap him with like someone with long blonde hair, and he's face swap Kylo Ren with someone with long blonde hair, and you've gotten screaming Kylo Ren's lines, and he's probably pretty similar to Fëanor.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Anyway, that was sorry to take y'all off guard, but that was just something.
No, yeah, I'm terrible at fan casting because like I don't know the names and backgrounds of enough actors to do it well.
Okay.
But yeah. Let's see. So our next one. Okay. So Anna H actually has a few entries here. Her first is the disappearance of the Entwives. Maybe the last male Ent children lost their mothers. Oh, well, that's sad. I think we were joking before we
were. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, Pat, you can do your fake trailer again.
In a world where the Entwives have gone missing, one man can find them. Boom.
Yes. I love how we can turn that into an action movie. I mean, you could basically like, I'm sure you could invent some elf character or a ranger to be the person to be like,
Oh, this would be like a blue wizard who's like come out of the east after the scourging, and Sauron has like destroyed it, and he's gone. And he's like, oh no, they're gone. I gotta find them. And now he's like on a quest to do. Okay, yeah, we're pitching this. This is going. No.
He arrives on a meteor and crashes into the ground. It's found by Hearth.
Love that meteor thing, don't you, Jeff?
I love just trolling.
Yes.
We get through one pitch session without a meteor. No,
that needs to go on our like bingo card thing. Is mentioning the meteor wizard.
Meteor.
Yeah. But yeah, what do you think, Jeff? Did putting the Entwives in a future Middle Earth property? I mean, we've already seen an Entwife in something, so
yeah. And I mean, if you could do something like, and if we even wanted to connect it to Rings of Power, you could have Arondir kind of be that, like, where he's going to like help find the other Entwives or something because he's already met one. So you could even kind of continue that with an established character from
Arondir spinoff. Yeah.
And he's just parkouring. It's like a parkour. It's like a combination like parkour, and like detective show. So he's just like having to parkour around and find clues to the Entwives and
Middle Earth Impossible
like,
instead.
It's like the Incredible Hulk. Every episode ends with him on the highway.
Except walking slow, he's parkouring through.
Slowly
the trees
parkouring through the trees.
Yeah. Whenever Arondir becomes angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs. I don't know what kind, but
well, I mean, that's actually pretty accurate if you watch just the Rings of Power.
I mean, that's true.
When he's in combat mode, he's like stabbing people's faces off and.
Now I just want to go back and watch that original Hulk show. Oh, great. Yeah. So Anna H's second entry is the anomalous ones, Tom Bombadil and Beorn. Tom Bombadil is clearly in love with his wife and probably has a fun story of trying to woo her. Beorn apparently also gets married, ? I mean, that's true because, right, Beorn's the father of a whole race, the Beornings.
The Beornings.
Yeah.
So this is obviously a buddy comedy, right? With Tom and Beorn getting together.
I mean, that'd be great.
It's the Odd Couple.
Yeah.
It's the Odd Couple, but in...
They're both bachelors, right? So before they get married, right? Although I don't think Beorn's that old, but whatever. I mean, like, you can make it work. It's a comedy. It doesn't need to make sense.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Or alternatively, what would also be kind of funny is that since Beorn says he knows Radagast, a kind of situational comedy with those two might be pretty funny. Because Radagast is like, well, at least in the movies, he's kind of this like absent-minded wizard with, bird crap in his hair and some other crazy stuff.
You see, like him causing problems that Beorn has to solve constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, Radagast. If we're doing the Odd Couple with Radagast and Beorn, like Radagast is, I forget which character is which. I think he would be Oscar, or Radagast would be Oscar. I think he's the messy one, and then Beorn would be Felix, the clean one.
Yeah.
I mean, they both like animals. Although I could see Beorn getting like annoyed by the fact that Radagast would probably keep bringing back more animals to the house. Yeah, no, that would be cool. Although, like, I don't know if I want to see more Tom Bombadil and stuff. I would just rather. Please don't overuse Tom. Don't do it. So let's see. The third entry from Anna is how much sillier the elves are in The Hobbit. I don't think that was done justice in any live action yet. Yes, so I have a theory about this. It's my headcanon that, okay, so in the Hobbit book, when they arrive at Rivendell, there's all these elves there to greet them, singing this ridiculous song, tra-la-la-la-lee, welcome to the valley, or whatever. And I'm like, those are little kids, aren't they? Mm-hmm. They're little kid elves. Because I'm sure, like, since Middle-earth is a dangerous place, like, I can imagine, like, part of Rivendell almost being like an elf daycare. Like, that's where they foster their kids, So, like, I can imagine this situational comedy of, like, all these kids running around and Elrond's just like, oh, you know, like, causing trouble and whatnot. Because, yeah, I really think that my headcanon is that the very silly elves are little kids in The Hobbit.
Well, haven't they? I mean, to go to the books at least, aren't really not many elves like born in Middle Earth. Like there's a few here and there, of course, like Arwen and like Celebrian are, but I think isn't it that a lot of elves aren't actually born in Middle Earth? Most of them came over from Aman in the Great Crossing. Well, I guess there's the elves that didn't go to Aman would have been there. So
right, yeah.
But I guess what I mean is a lot aren't born in like the Third Age. I think most are born in like Second Age, and then it's kind of maybe a sign of the elves fading that they're
not bearing a lot of children at this time. Yeah, but the kids that do exist would probably remain kids for like a while, right? I mean, I read somewhere at least. I read somewhere at least that like by the time a normal human is like 20, an elf would still look like a child. It's almost like the Grogu thing, where like he's 50 and he's still a baby.
Well, that wouldn't bode well for Tariel and her dwarf boyfriend if they had ever had kids.
Yeah, I don't even want to imagine what that is like. Pat just has this 1,000-yard stare right now.
Oh, I just see it like Ale is like working in the shop somewhere, and he perks his head up like, "What is going on over there?"
But yeah, one thing about the Peter Jackson movies is that they definitely tamped down on some of the levity of the elves. I mean, even in the Fellowship of the Ring book, those first elves that Frodo and the hobbits encounter when they're trying to leave the Shire, like, are kind of, I wouldn't say they're silly, but they're more lighthearted than some of the elves we meet later.
Right.
In the trilogy. You know, they're singing, they're having fun, they're cracking jokes. So it's like, yeah, I mean, elves have this. And what does Sam say when they're in Rivendell? He tells Frodo that there are different kinds of elves there, that some are like kings, terrible and splendid, and others are as merry as children. So clearly, you know, there's a lot of leeway in elven personality, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the elves in, you know, to go back to Rings of Power, there were elf kids running around Eregion, and like at least in like I don't know if, I'm trying to think if we saw them running around before Sauron got there, but we at least saw like the vision he projected of kids playing with like kites and stuff, so.
Oh yeah, and then there were some in the evacuation too when Galadriel.
Yeah, we saw them running around, like running hither and thither and to and fro.
Everybody run, just run everywhere.
Doing the Scooby Doo.
Yes,
bongo drum.
Or like that thing where that episode of SpongeBob where it's all the little SpongeBobs in his brain just running around while everything's on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And Anna's fourth pitch here is, I would like to see Aragorn being a father more than just his deathbed advice from the appendices. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, besides that, we don't know a whole lot about Fourth Age Aragorn, essentially.
Yeah, and that would be interesting because we have, I mean, I think you have probably some ideas on this, Thomas, of this being the child of some big heroes. Like, what would your life, you know, be like?
Yeah, like, I'm more interested in Eldarion because it's like, man, the pressure on that kid. It's like, yeah, your dad basically saved the West and all that stuff and helped defeat Sauron and reunited the kingdoms of men. Yeah, well, what have you got, kid? And like, even if there's no explicit pressure, you know that kid's thinking it. You know, there's got to be, you know, implicit pressure. Like, how do I ever measure up to that? You know? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be cool to see the fourth age and like how it develops, because they do talk about in the appendices how there's further wars or further battles that Aragorn and Éomer fight together. Like it says they go to war many times together, and they renew their because Éomer becomes the king of Rohan, and they go to war and they renew their friendship and all that. So that would be really cool to see if it was like an Aragorn Éomer type of thing, like, and Eldarion and Éomer's son go along as well. Like they're learning from their dads, or like maybe Eldarion goes to Rohan for a time, and Éomer's son goes to Gondor for a time as like a foster type of thing, like not in the sense of like a foster home, but like how Aragorn was fostered in Rivendell.
Right.
Could be interesting to like, they can kind of develop that, how they can be friends, how they can kind of, tie those two great kingdoms of men together.
Yeah, as I'll talk about a little bit later when we get to our pitches. There's a lot of potential for some fun character stuff, post the fall of Sauron, just to catch up on everybody, see how everybody's doing.
Yeah.
All right, so our next one is from Paul Leone, and Paul, I've got a shame on you for stealing my idea, but no, Paul and I are friends, so I know we have similar tastes. But his pitch is this: I'd love to see a prestige TV show about the division of Arnor, the wars between the successor states, and the eventual near triumph and then fall of Angmar. Something with the budget and scale of Game of Thrones, with the grosser elements dialed down considerably. 5 or 6 seasons with long time in setting time gaps between them would be ideal. You could use Elrond, amongst other Rivendell elves who lived through the events and show up in the main narrative, instructing a young Aragorn in the history of his people as the framing device. The wizards arrived 1,000 years before the fall of Arthedain, so you could have them appear in the story too. Since this is long before the fall of Saruman, you could even have him in a purely heroic role for once. Yeah, I love that part of the appendices where it talks about the Angmar wars against the Witch King by the northern kingdom of Arnor, because I feel like it has a very Fall of Camelot vibe to it. And yeah, I think you could have hobbits in this show too, because without shoehorning them in, because hobbits were not only around, they even sent archers to help the men of Arnor defend their realm against the Witch King. So you could even have a hobbit character, maybe like I don't know, an ancestor of like one of the Tukes or something like that. That would be I'm serious, because like like they end up being one of the chief families of the Shire, and they always had an adventurous streak. I think this is a great idea. I would love this show, because it sets up a lot of how Eriador and the Shire and the Rangers, so like a lot of the things we know from the Fellowship of the Ring are set up in the fall of the North Kingdom, basically.
It really would not take much to remove the grosser elements from Game of Thrones, because those elements didn't really exist in actual medieval times, because running water and bathing, and it's so I have a lot of problems with the Game of Thrones stuff, but like people go around, oh, that's what it was really like in the medieval era, and I'm like, no, it wasn't. Like, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
in part because they didn't use soap. But yeah, so you could remove most of those elements pretty quickly with
that look where like everybody's and everything is grungy and like
I think Paul's talking about other things.
That's true.
He is, and that's
he's not talking about
the point. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah,
it wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that. Yeah.
No, that would be we've kind of talked about that before. That would be really cool to see, because like high fantasy stuff, like there's it's kind of a genre that's kind of in vogue right now, because we have the couple Game of Thrones spinoffs, we have Rings of Power, Wheel of Time, so that would be really cool to see something like that. Like you could have the fantasy elements, but not be as like, maybe not as, maybe more like more grounded in a way. I mean, I guess if you're fighting the Witch King or the Witch Kimmin of Angmar, then maybe. But I mean, you could have, you could have those wars, and that would be really interesting. And you can see the map, like you do like the map intro that Game of Thrones has, and
oh yeah,
like the different realms of middle or of that area, kind of going up and down, and yeah, that'd be really cool.
It would be like a lot less likely to tick anybody off either, because there's most of the characters would be not original, but at least characters who don't have a lot of stuff about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, Galadriel and Sauron and Elrond and Celebrimbor and all of these characters that have reams of material about them inside of the canon. Most of the people involved, I mean, even the Witch King doesn't have that much about him in canon. Right. And so you don't run the risk of ticking off, you don't run as big of a risk of ticking off the fandom.
Yeah.
The character wrong.
I think the one character you really have to get right from this time period, or people would go insane, is Glorfindel.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not appeared in anything yet. And he's like this, very heroic and pivotal character in the first age, and then later appears in the third age as well. So, and he, he's the guy who lays down the prophecy of the Witch King, that not by the hand of man will he be defeated. So, and like I said, it sets up so much that we know later of, because in the Lord of the Rings, you're just given this prophecy that the Witch King will not fall by the hand of man. And you're like, and in the movies, like, you're especially that's just thrown at you. And you're like, why? Like, if you haven't read the books, you don't know why, that it goes back to his battles against Arnor and stuff. And yeah, there's definitely too that Game of Thrones aspect, because Arnor is like a disintegrating kingdom. It's being pulled into factions, and you have like some people support the Witch King. I don't know why you would do that, but like,
yeah, he brought jobs.
He's
creating jobs.
Creating jobs as undead zombies, I guess. I mean, he's creating the Barrow Wights and all that stuff. But no, yeah, this has been one of my like, if you gave me the resources and money, this is probably the show I would make. Would be the Wars of the Witch King, or the I don't know what I would call the show. So I guess you could just call it Lord of the Rings, the Angmar Wars, or something like that, because people know that name because of the Witch King of Angmar. But yeah, no blue wizards in this show though, because they're far away. So you could have wizards, but no blue wizards. So our next couple of pitches come from Andrew Chikowski. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Andrew. His first is Aragorn's early service under the name Thorongil to Ecthelion of Gondor and Thengel of Rohan. This is a great idea, because if you were going to do a young Aragorn show, I feel like this is how you would do it, right? Him traveling the lands and solving problems and with his secret identity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, I was just thinking it'd be like the young Indiana Jones. Did that ever get made into a show? I remember.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I think of this, as the sort of adventure show where every episode is a new kind of adventure, and then season 1 he's in Gondor, and season 2 he moves on to Rohan, and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's almost like this could be kind of a cool anime if they do it like he's like an anime style, and he's kind of like the Ronin, kind of wandering from place to place and pledging service for a time, or helping solve a problem for a time. So if they did like an anime style, that could be really cool. I like
that.
Yeah.
As long as they did it as like a limited anime and not one of the ones that goes to like 47 seasons and 872 episodes, like Rurouni Kenshin or Inuyasha or what?
Well, when they run out of manga material, that's when animes go wrong. Well, One Piece is that's.
Or then they force the manga creator to come back and create more manga so they can create more anime.
We brought her back from the dead, folks. He's going to make more anime. No, just let it end.
Yeah, this would be, I mean, if you were to do this would be something like, because a lot of anime now are like much more limited seasons. They're not, just because it's becoming a lot more expensive to make. So they're like with anything. So they're not making as many of these hundreds of episodes series. Like, some of them get maybe to 200, but a lot of them are like, may get 30 or 40 episodes. And so you could have a tighter story with that. And like have each, like you said, have each season be serving in Gondor and Rohan, like adventuring with Elrond's twin sons and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Like the Grey Company or
Samurai Champloo, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea. That would be really cool. And especially when he said that thing he says at the Council of Elrond, where he's like, I've been to Rune and Harad and all that stuff. You could have, seasons where he's there. So you don't have to stay within the stuff that we know, too. You can kind of have him go beyond the edge of the map a little bit, which would be fun. Oh, and it would be really fun to see his like first interactions with Gandalf because of how tight they become later. So that would be cool because I think in part of that section of the appendix, which Andrew's referencing, they mention briefly how Aragorn first meets Gandalf, but I've always thought it'd be cool to get more info on that. And then Andrew's second pitch is pretty interesting. The imprisonment of Turin and rescue by Beleg, which is actually just a part of the larger Children of Hurin story, right? And I think is Andrew referring to the part where Turin is captured by the orcs and then Beleg, I think, dies trying to rescue him? Spoilers. I think.
I'm trying to remember this, to be honest.
It's been a while.
Because there's, I mean, if I remember right, he kills Beleg accidentally.
Yeah.
While he's trying to escape.
The movie just ends there.
Yeah. I mean, this would be, movie probably, I don't know, 19 and the 26 movie film adaptation of the Silmarillion.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely think that the Children of Hurin, deserves to be made into live action. I mean, but they would have to get it right.
So depressing.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
I mean, like Beren and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin, they both have like their sad and depressing parts, but there is like hope at the end of those two stories. The Children of Hurin does not end on a good note at all.
Have you read the alternate ending, which is even more depressing? That's the one where his so you know how there's like the grave for like Turin and Nienor, right? Right. And then their parents reunite at the grave in the alternate ending, and then both die there.
Huh.
And I'm like, how could you? I think it's in the version that's just packaged by itself. As the Children of Hurin, and he includes Christopher included this alternate ending, and I'm like, you managed to make this even more depressing.
It's even sadder now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be it on its own. That'd be pretty rough.
Yeah. I mean, like any normal fantasy movie would end where he kills Glaura.
Right, exactly. Like, let's end on a high note, folks.
Oh yeah. So depressing. That would be like HBO or something.
Right.
Because it's depressing and like that. I don't know how people would take that. I feel like that'd be like the kind of show where people, or movie where people would get angry at the end because it doesn't have a happy ending. And it's like, at least, and like, although with some stuff I don't understand that. Okay, and I have not seen Game of Thrones, but I know people got so upset with like the last couple of seasons. And
really the last season,
really the last season.
Yeah.
But like, I saw that part of it was all like, oh, it's like, so like, you know, like, and I'm like, how are you expecting that to end? Like,
well, we don't know because we don't have the books.
Yeah. But I mean, how the show itself ends is,
yeah. Well, I mean,
I guess
not to spin off into that tangent, but I mean, the problem is they just basically try to do, they were given one more season and they tried to wrap up this huge storyline. And they rushed everything. Like the first couple of episodes were really good. And then it got to a point that could have been kind of a cool ending in a way, but then they kept going. Like,
don't you just hate when shows do that?
Well, I mean, it wasn't really ended, but it was like, if they had ended there, it would have at least been on like kind of a high note and you could kind of imagine something better. And then they did what they did.
Okay. So yeah, Rings of Power. Don't do that. Don't.
We have the books. We have the books.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can make up stuff along the way, but we know how. Do the 5 seasons, end up with the Last Alliance,
and don't rush that.
Yeah. Don't get all like, oh, I'm gonna go run the Star Wars franchise, and then do such a terrible job at Game of Thrones that you get fired from that job. 9 episodes, fools. Anyways.
So that's actually it for our patron responses, and thank you guys for sending these in. It was great to chat about these ideas, but now we've all brainstormed some ideas of our own. So Pat, why don't we start with you? What's your first idea you want to pitch to us?
Okay, so my first idea is keeping an eye on Bilbo. It's an animated show about the Rangers who have to keep Bilbo safe when he decides to go off on his own and try and keep him from getting captured by the agents of Mordor.
I love this.
Keeping an eye on Bilbo.
Yeah.
So much trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be, this would be, animated and definitely kind of an 80s style. I'm thinking a lot about the Droids TV show.
Right, or like Hanna-Barbera or something. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Bilbo's always getting into trouble and the Rangers have to show up and save the day. All without Bilbo noticing.
Right, yeah. This reminds me of just like a throwaway line that Bilbo has in the Fellowship of the Ring book where he says something about like Gandalf said the enemy was looking high and low for me and would make mincemeat out of me if he caught me tottering about in the wild. And I'm like, yeah, a whole show just based on that would be pretty awesome.
Very, very Mr. Magoo kind of a thing going on.
They have to bring back Bilbo's catchphrases from the 1977 movie. How convenient, and bless my soul. They've got to bring those back for this.
He just finds like a basket of food in the woods and is like, oh, that's very convenient. And
how convenient.
Brought it for him so he doesn't starve.
That's how they explain all the Deus Ex Machinas in the show. He just goes, how convenient.
Convenient.
Or like the Rangers like secretly do something for him and he doesn't notice and he's just like, how convenient. All right, Jeff, what's your first? All
right. Well, so to continue on the kind of jokiness a little bit, and this one's more of a joke pitch, but it would be kind of funny. I'm pretty sure they're doing something similar with Harry Potter now, but doing the Great Shire Bake Off, and it's a Hobbit cooking competition show. And you have hobbits from across the Shire, competing in baking and cooking or whatever you want to do, and you just have, and it's just film it like a cooking show, like any kind of competition like Top Chef or whatever, and the cooks get eliminated, and it so I just thought that'd be kind of funny because hobbits love their food, and I think they probably have the best food probably in Middle Earth, if I was guessing. So
aren't you excited? It's pastry week here on the Great Shire Bake Off.
And you could have if they did it with like if it was like a fate like out of universe show or something, you could have like celebrity chefs like Gordon Ramsay or something like, this is
Paul
garbage.
Hollywood.
Throw it away. Whatever. I won't say more of his more colorful phrases, but
now I'm just thinking of that skit where Gordon Ramsay had the cook off with the Swedish chef from the Muppets.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. But that was just the the kind of joke one I had. So
the tonal whiplash from that is my first one. So since Paul stole my idea for the Agmar Wars show, I settled on something similar, which is Gondor's Kinstrife. Which if you don't know what that is, it's from the appendices, and it's essentially Gondor's civil war, and it's got a very I guess Game of Thrones sort of setup, where the rightful king of Gondor is overthrown by a distant cousin called Castamir the Usurper, who doesn't think that he basically thinks the current king of Gondor is a half-breed because he has his mother was one of the Northmen, so the ancestors of the Rohirrim. And so there's you can have the sort of proto-Rohirrim in the show because the king eventually and one of his sons end up escaping to the north, and they have to come back and reclaim their kingdom, essentially, from this guy called Castamir the Usurper, who, at least in the appendices, is described as a pretty ruthless and brutal leader. I've actually read some there was an RPG source book written years ago for this time period in Gondor where they actually did a lot of cool stuff with having the different cities of Gondor being pitted against each other because they supported different factions, and also having they're like Castamir has his own sort of secret police type guards, and they're set against like the royal guards, this is the period where Osgiliath gets burned down for the first time. So I think in the RPG book, they actually had, since Osgiliath is a ruin, it gets turned into a big prison camp for all Castamir's enemies. And there's a lot of intrigue and stuff going on between the different cities. I just thought it'd be a really cool way to do a show where the bad guy isn't Sauron, or some other Maiar or Wraith or something like that, where the bad guys are just completely human characters.
The bad guy was man.
Humanity was the villain all along. Yeah.
Turns out.
Yeah, no, that would be cool because I've done a little bit of. I mean, I've read the appendices before, but it's been a while since I've kind of really delved into it. So yeah, stories like that would be really cool because it's something you could expand on, like we keep saying. And there's some material, but it's not like a whole novel or a whole collated book of writings about them. It's just one kind of section of the appendices. So I give it the green light. With all my powers to do so.
So Pat, your next one looks like it continues our sort of downer note of stories.
Yeah, so originally, so this would be Aldarion and Arendis, the Mariner's wife. So if you've read the Unfinished Tales, that's what it's from. And I originally kind of envisioned this as sort of a multi-season sort of epoch about Numenor in the Second Age. But the more I think about it, the more I think I'd rather see this like as a standalone film. That's sort of a, I don't know, kind of a romance film, but a romance kind of gone wrong, or because it's not nearly of the level of Greek tragedy that Turin's story is. That few things are, but it is a tragic story, and it's a tragic romance, and I think it would actually be pretty good as a standalone film. I would love to see a multi-part series that was Numenor in the Second Age, though, kind of taking through the move from them being a primarily stay on the island kind of people all the way to where you see them by the by the time we're seeing in the TV show, where they're like all about seafaring,
right?
Sort of the transition phase from one to the other. But yeah, I think this story in itself would be better suited to a film.
Yeah, and do we have, because it is unfinished. I mean, it's in the Unfinished Tales. Do we have like notes from Tolkien about how he wanted to end this?
Not that I know of. I'd have to pull up the Unfinished Tales again and reread it. But what I remember is it kind of just stops.
Yeah,
and then you're done. Like, and that's a lot of the Unfinished Tales. It just stops, and we have like, vague sketches maybe sometimes about what's going to come after, but a lot of times you got nothing. Like, it's just Tolkien didn't want to write about it anymore, and he moved on.
I mean, I could see why. Like, it's like reading that story is like watching a neighbor's marriage fall apart.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a very tragic love story, which, I mean, is somewhat true to life. Those exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think would make this, very relatable to a lot of people. Jeff, so what's your next pitch for us?
Yeah, so I don't remember all the details of, and I mean, it's a good thing we're going through the Silmarillion because it's going to remind me, but a story, or either, I think doing a show would be probably the way to go for this, but doing something about focusing on Eärendil the Mariner. And I don't really, like I said, I don't remember all the details of his, I don't remember his biography, but he's ultimately the one that sails, to Valinor to try to plead with the Valar to come aid the men, or to come aid elves and men in Middle Earth to, or all the peoples really, to come and defeat Morgoth, defeat Morgoth for the last time. So doing something about him and his, he had his sons, Elros and Elrond, and his wife was a bird sometimes. I don't remember what the timeline for that, if that happens more after the War of Wrath ends, but doing something about his life and having him, leave his family behind to sail, because he's, maybe having him, he sees the tragedy of this war of what Morgoth's done, and just this almost never ending, it's like a never ending conflict until he pleads for the Valar, and he sails to Aman, basically forfeiting his life because he's like no mortal, because he is descended from elves, but he's not counted among them, counted among the elves yet. And I guess he's not, I don't know if he's really technically counted because he does his own thing later, but he eventually sails and then pleads with the Valar to come aid men. And he's so moved, or the Valar are so moved that they do it. And then I think it's 40 years after he sails, they come across and ultimately, defeat Morgoth, and doing a whole show about his journey there and his journey, back to Middle Earth and ultimately to see the defeat of Morgoth and see him in his flying ship, fighting the biggest dragon of all time, which for patrons we just talked about not that long ago. For the rest of you, it'll be a few more months, but I think it would just be really epic and really cool. And you could see, like we were kind of talking about Aragorn's son, but it's like Elrond and Elros are seeing their dad, who's this like larger than life figure, and how they can live up to it. So you could even have them as, and you could even, if you don't do it just about Eärendil, but if you did about his family, you could go into like the actual founding of Numenor, not just seeing where it is by the time of Rings of Power, but you could actually see all that play out in a series. So maybe not necessarily about Eärendil, but just about like his life and his family, and then ultimately him. And of course, the show ends where he's waving goodbye to everybody, and he's flying off into the night to carry the Silmaril, because I believe it's the Silmaril he continually carries right across across the and it's the Star of Eärendil. So just a show about him and his adventures would be really, really cool. And I mean, I don't know how many, because I mean, it takes place over such a long period of time. I don't know how long you would want to do it, but at least a couple seasons, you could do something like that. And, you could do different eras of his life, like his season one's like his young life, season two is like he's starting to adventure. And then, like the last season is him sailing west, and then ends with him, coming across the flying ship and slaying the dragon and all that. So I think that'd be really cool to see something like that. And even could be an anime, because I mean, there's so much effects and stuff you have to do for this that it'd be doing a whole show would be really, really expensive of that. And I mean, Rings of Power is expensive, so they could do something like that. But I feel like this would be so kind of effects heavy that doing it in an animated form would probably work. I think it would probably make it work, cost effectively compared to live action. But if they want to do it live action, I'm on board.
Yeah, especially because like we really don't know a lot about Eärendil as a character. I think in the Silmarillion, you're told a lot about him, but I don't think you get a good sense of him as a person. So it would be
right. You kind of get things he's done, but nothing really, no real like conversations he has or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd definitely like to see him fleshed out as a character. My next one is, since the powers that be at Amazon have decided to not give us the blue wizards as they're supposed to be, I would like just something about the blue wizards, whether it's a film or a TV show, just because they have such a pivotal role in the East and in the South, turning, at least some of the men living there against Sauron, so that the people of the West are not completely overwhelmed in the War of the Ring by sheer weight of numbers. So really, they kind of open up the second front against Sauron, and they're kind of these unsung heroes. And you have this blank canvas to show them doing all kinds of amazing things in Rhûn and in Harad. And yeah, I just feel like it's potential that hasn't been delivered on yet. Come on, guys.
Yeah. More blue wizards.
Yes, more blue wizards, please.
Fewer Gandalf. No. We only need the one.
Fewer Sarumans.
Yeah. So Pat, what's your next one?
All right, so here's the pitch. The Lay of Beleriand. A multi-season epoch. We start with the Neo-Natho-Nordian Battle of Unnumbered Tears. From this battle springs the stories of Beren, Hurin, Turin, and Tuor. And we just follow them all. Just follow them all. So we do Beren and Luthien. We do the Children of Hurin. We do the fall of Gondolin. And then finally, the fall of Angband. So you just take us all the way through the end of the first age there.
That's a good jumping off point. Because, yeah, you're right. That battle sets off the three major storylines of the back half of the Quenta Silmarillion.
Yeah. So, this would be like films, probably the last 6-7 films of the of the 26-part Tolkien cinematic universe, if we're going to do the whole of the Silmarillion. But if you just want to do the Lay of Beleriand, that's where you just start at the Neo-Natho-Nordian and you go forward from there. Real big set piece scenes and Calagon the Black fighting Thorondor and the flying ship and crashing into Thangorodrim. and Hulk Hogan smashing
Hulk Hogan Tolkos.
Hulk Hogan Tokos smashing Morgoth, and
Hulk Hogan.
you could even Hulk
Hogan.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, excellent, solid.
Yeah, I feel like this is the series they need to do but won't.
Right. Like this is like when they were the Rings of Power or whatever. I was like, how come they just didn't do this? Like
They don't have the rights to it.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
Because I mean, the Silmarillion is like it's the last thing published, and it wasn't even published by J.R. Tolkien. It's published by his son, but it's kind of the crown jewel of the Legendarium, I feel like, because it's some of the oldest stuff that he never finished. So I feel like it's very near and dear to the Tolkien estate, and they'll. I want to say I looked up the rights not that long ago, and I think in like the 2040s is when they become public domain. So
yeah.
So we maybe and by then AI will be so good that you can just like put in a prompt and it'll create the show. So
for me, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We'll be in the what do they call it? The when
Matrix.
Well, no, what's the singularity? Will be in the singularity.
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 So Jeff, you kind of bring us down from high adventure back to the world of men. In your
so I thought it would be cool, and we're going to be talking about this very soon in more detail. But I think a series on the founding of Rohan would be really interesting. Because we're doing a whole episode on Rohan coming out before War of the Rohirrim, so I'm not going to relay the entire history right now. But if you did a show, just kind of, you could do this. Could just be a couple seasons, maybe, of like season one is like because the Rohan people or the pre-Rohan people were horse lords living kind of near Gondor, but they didn't have like a whole kingdom of their own yet, and they helped Gondor out in several battles, and ultimately are given this land to be their own. And you could do a whole show on like the first season could be like the setup of it, and then it ends, and then like the second season is the big battle, the big thing where they help out Gondor, and then the final season could be like where it ends with establishing the kingship, and he's being and the first I believe it's Eorl's the first king of Rohan. It could be his whole story, so you can kind of be your focus character throughout the show. So I think that would just be really cool, and it would be much more grounded. It would be like it would definitely be like you have the big battles, set piece battles, lots of cavalry charges, and horse battles and stuff. So I think that would be really cool though.
Yeah, and everybody loves the Rohirrim, so more Rohirrim is always good.
And very soon there will be a movie exclusively about the Rohirrim.
Yeah, but for the rest of our listeners, by the time you're listening to this in the future, whether that film, whether we liked it or not, because we don't know yet. Originally, for my next one, I was gonna say a Beren and Luthien animated film, but we kind of already talked about Beren and Luthien a lot. So I thought maybe like another cool first stage film, and this wouldn't have to be animated in my mind. It could be live action too. Was kind of another part of that great like triple lay of Valerian that could stand on its own is Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin.
Yeah,
which I think, and since that's literally some of the first Middle Earth stuff that got written, while Tolkien's in the trenches of the Somme in 1916. So and when he's recovering from getting trench fever. So I really think that like it, because it's got, even though the city falls in this like titanic battle and there's dragons and duels against Balrogs and all that stuff, it has a hopeful ending where Tuor and his wife Idril are able to get a remnant of the people out. And Idril herself has some cool action moments, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, it's just like that whole like that would be just like the second half of the movie is like that whole battle. This huge like insane Titanic battle sequence. And you have like just a great villain in Maeglin. Mm-hmm. And you'd grow to hate that guy throughout the whole movie. So by the time when he's thrown from the pinnacle of Gondolin, you'd be like, yeah. And it would begin with just Tuor, finding him leaving his home and going into that cavern and coming to the shores of the sea and going to Lamoth and finding the armor. And can you imagine the scene with Olmo when he comes up out of the water and he's like a giant because he's a Valar, and and there's been some great artwork paintings of that moment, so I think it would look even greater on screen. Yeah, so the Fall of Gondolin, it's just one of the great stories of the Legendarium, and we've heard it referenced a couple of times in the Rings of Power, but I would like to see it brought to life. I think that would be really great. So Pat, yeah, I gotta say I love your last one. I think it's so great.
All right, my last one is Círdan's Fun Time Story Hour. So you have it's a children's show. You have Círdan telling stories about Middle Earth, and they get animated as he tells them. And there's always a good moral to them, and he basically just slowly tells the entirety of all of the histories of Middle Earth as the show goes on. But it's in kind of that fun animation children's kind of style. Maybe there'll be Muppets. It could go a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah, I'll kind of like show with Muppets and regular actors would be pretty hysterical.
Exactly.
Middle Earth Sesame Street.
Yes. Círdan's Fun Time Story Hour is brought to you by the letter C.
Or like really confuse the kids. It's like brought to you by the Tengwar character, and then like you show.
And the number 14.
Dawson, that's good enough for me.
What's that?
L is for Lim Dawson. That's good enough for me.
Yeah. Or like you have the
far. Really far. Impossible to cross unless you're an elf.
How does he explain the children of Huron to the kids?
We're just not going to talk about this one, kids. Moving on. What happens after he's slain the dragon? We're not going to talk about that. Did he live happily ever after? No. It just ends right there.
And then there'd be like this one Muppet who's like an invisible Moomakill, he's like Snuffleupagus. Moomacophilus or something.
Or they have an Oliphant, but it's a Muppet.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. Oliphantalus or something like that. Would be great.
Children, it's Oliphantalus.
Amazon, this is all for free, by the way.
Yeah. Just give me a credit line, somewhere.
So Jeff, what's your last pitch?
Yeah, so my last one, we talked about a young Aragorn show, so it's not. so that would be cool. But I think doing something, and you could maybe combine it in a way of having, and I'm calling this Tales of the Dunedain, and basically and I'm thinking doing it in animation, just because of if you're going to be doing a lot of different characters, you wouldn't, it'd be easier to do it in animation rather than have to hire a bunch of real life actors and extras and all that. But doing a show kind of highlighting some of the tales of the Dunedain. So like each episode is about a different kind of legendary, chieftain or legendary, Dunedain, or even just like groups of the Rangers and like the things they do over time. And you could have it as as a young Aragorn, like learning about these tales, or even telling his son about these tales of the Dunedain. You could even we have the fan film Born of Hope, so you could even do that as well. But I think it would just be really cool to get, and you could have young Aragorn, like he could be part of that too, like his tales, his travels with the Grey Company, and Elrond's sons who are kind of off on all these adventures, and you could have the Elrond's sons kind of be like, they're like the ones that are always there, like throughout the different ages of these characters, because they're elves and they're they're long lived, if not immortal, because we don't know if they stay behind in Middle Earth or not. But you could have them be like they kind of be like the Elrond, like we were talking about. There was one pitch where Elrond was kind of like the figure that's there the whole time and provides guidance. So you could have the twin brothers kind of get focused there. I think it'd just be really cool of getting, and I don't know enough about. I mean, I could go read the appendices and learn more about all these kind of legendary Dunedain and legendary Rangers, but doing something along those lines would be really cool. Just getting, and you could do, like I said, you could do like snippets of, here's this Dunedain from the Third Age, 100, or and then 100, and then as you progress through the age until you finally end with Aragorn. So like ending it with Born of Hope, that storyline, and then you can then go right into Lord of the Rings, right into Lord of the Rings. So or even you could have the spin-off of the Hobbit movies where you have which end where Legolas is going to go find Aragorn.
Right,
so you can do that there too. But something about Aragorn, or learning about the history of his lineage of the Dunedain, and not just the kings and the legendary kings and everything, but also like these deeds throughout that are kind of hidden and you wouldn't know unless you were learning about it from an elf or from somebody who had this kind of hidden history. So it could almost be like a hidden history of the Dunedain.
Hidden history of the Dunedain here on History Channel.
Secrets will be revealed.
It was aliens. Aliens and Bigfoot founded the Dunedain. I don't know. Well, more seriously, though, Jeff, I could see them doing like little arcs in a show like that, too. Almost like Tales of the Jedi in Star Wars.
Yeah, it could even be, I'd love for long form stories, but you could do like short form where he learns about the one deed this one Dunedain did. But that's my pitch for Tales of the Dunedain.
Well, my last pitch is for Tales of the Fourth Age, which this would be a series of animated shorts, maybe each one even done in a different animated style. But the idea is that you kind of pick up with like mostly the characters of the Fellowship or other like important side characters with what they're doing in the years after the fall of Sauron, right? So you could have like that moment that's described in the appendices where King Aragorn and Queen Arwen visit the borders of the Shire and get to meet all the hobbits again and see what they're up to and meet Sam and his huge family. You could meet Gimli and the dwarves when they found when Gimli becomes Lord of the Glittering Caves in the caves behind Helm's Deep, and you could see how they're kind of living as neighbors of the Rohirrim. Or you could even do one where it's when Legolas and Gimli finally they're the last of the Fellowship and they sail to Valinor together. You could do that as well. Just like a series of tales of what kind of everybody's doing in these years after. And these would be kind of poignant stories because we're kind of seeing where these characters are later in life. But yeah, I just think that would be a neat little just animated miniseries, basically. Almost kind of like, like Star Wars Visions in the sense that, they're different styles and they're short little vignettes, Yeah,
kind of like the end of the Sandlot, but in short form or longer form than that, where they explain what happens to every member of the
or like any 80s movie where they just show a picture of and say that what each person did,
what each person
did. Of Animal House.
Yeah.
Or the end in, like, they did that in historical epics too, like the end of Gettysburg, where it's just like this guy went on and did that, and
yeah, and if they really wanted to rip our hearts out doing that, they could do that. And you see, Pippin and Merry go back to Gondor because they're buried beside Aragorn, because I believe they die first, and then they're right. I don't know if they're buried in Gondor initially, but they're at least like finally laid to rest and next to Aragorn. So doing like seeing like final conversations between them would be really interesting.
And you have to have one where it's Eleanor, Sam's daughter, as an adult, reading to her children out of the Red Book.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And then it ultimately ends where you have, someone who's not identified as Tolkien, but someone who's Tolkien finds this Red Book of Westmarch and picks it up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's got like a never-ending story scene.
Yeah.
The beginning of that movie.
Yeah, and now I'm just thinking of, like, how you could do other kind of stories with, like, just Tolkien as like inserted into the.
Well, I mean, if we do the Tolkien cinematic universe, he'll have to make an appearance in every movie. I mean,
he's like
required, right?
He's like Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And then make him like the Watcher, and he's just, or like he's just like telling each story, like, but he's like observing the story as he's telling it or something, something like he's that kind of a genius where he can like observe the story he's telling within his own mind.
Yeah, I think that runs through all our pitches, unless you guys had any other last minute ideas that you wanted to share.
I mean, I could come up with something ridiculous, but yeah, no, I think all these sound good. Got my green light or whatever that's worth for all the pitches. So.
Yeah, I could probably keep going for a long time, but it's probably good to end it here. Mm-hmm. Still have some amount of sanity.
That's right. Yeah.
By the time he made his 20th pitch, he was way off the deep end.
But that's it for this episode of The Secrets of Middle-earth. But before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank all of you, our patrons, whose generous donations help us to continue to create The Secrets of Middle-earth and all the shows here at StarQuest. And if you didn't have time to get your pitch in, please let us know all about it in the comments on Patreon. And if you're one of our many other listeners who are hearing this show when it airs in our normal podcast feed, you can let us know your ideas on our Facebook page, on Twitter, or by sending an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, by leaving a comment on our YouTube channel, or by visiting our channel on the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. So thank you, Pat Mason, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle-earth.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
And Jeff Haecker, thank you as well.
Thanks, Thomas.
Until next time, I'm Thomas Salerno. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. Vatican II in a Year. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Vatican.